Let me ask you a question. Is it harder to parent a child today than, say, 40 or 50 years ago? What about raising a child today versus 2,000 years ago? You know, every generation has their parenting challenges. As parents, we seek to raise our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, but that's easier said than done, isn't it? Especially is it difficult when worldliness is unashamedly paraded before our kids everywhere they go. Whether you're taking your family to the mall or ball field, to the school, or even what is supposed to be a family-friendly amusement park, the devil and his agents of destruction, they're going to be there also. Of course, there is the internet and computers and cell phones, which have all become a convenient tool for his propaganda. Satan seeks to chip away the moral integrity of your family wherever your kids may roam, in the schoolroom, the classroom, and even their own bedroom. Satan will do his dead-level best to undermine their faith and moral purity. And in some ways, things have not really changed with the passing of time. In the day of the Apostle Paul, parents walking with their children in the city of Corinth would have been exposed to the sights that would have even made a sailor to blush, as we sometimes say. It was all around them. Everywhere they went, ungodliness paraded itself. And in some ways, what our children might see today might even be a little tame in comparison to some of the public sights in Corinth. If we had lived during the time of the Roman Empire, we would see sexual perversion and sin incorporated into things such as art and theater and music, governmental decrees, and even in the worship of their many pagan gods. Imagine driving with your children through the downtown area of your location and seeing prostitutes, both male and female, not just in a sketchy part of town, but right on Main Street, soliciting those who pass by to engage in sexual deviancy right on the steps of the pagan church building. Well, that's what early parents would have faced during the first century. Now, certainly we recognize that there have been particular times through the years in which parents have had some extraordinary challenges. I think we may be living in one of those times right now. But we can rest assured that parents in any generation, it's never going to be a piece of cake. When you take into consideration that you're dealing with a child who has the potential for imperfection, coupled with the fact that that child has been given free will by God, it would be true that every generation of parents have potentially faced extremely difficult circumstances. As godly parents examine the moral fabric of our nation today, it is not difficult to see that there is an ethical storm that's raging around us. The winds of change are blowing very hard these days. The godly values that American families once stood for are now being taken away by those in positions of power. Moral precepts that were once assumed to be permanent are no longer shared and celebrated in our nation. Standards of right and wrong are now being challenged openly and persistently. Tolerance of evil is now seen as a virtue, and intolerance of wickedness is seen as a vice. Moral confusion is being pushed and propagated on our children by politicians, entertainers, educators, corporations, and even religious institutions. Though parenting has never been easy, it is certainly becoming more complicated in our generation. All of these influences have certainly compounded our challenges that we face in raising godly children today. Now, don't get me wrong. Immorality and ungodliness, they've always been around. It began in the early history of man in the book of Genesis, and it continues even unto this day. Though the product of sin is still the same, the packaging has changed. It used to be that if a person wanted to view sexually explicit material, they'd have to walk into a convenience store and have the courage to ask for those materials that would be kept behind the counter. Today, the counter is simply a cell phone or maybe a laptop, and everybody has one. The end result is that the world is changing, and it's not changing for the better. So what is a parent to do? How can a parent face these unique challenges that we're facing in these troubling times? Well, what I'd like to do is suggest a few things that can help us as parents rise to the occasion. First of all, parents need to get their minds right. Now, what I mean is, as parents, we don't need to allow the world to influence how we think. One of the ploys of the change agent movement is to get us to adopt the thinking that truth is, well, it's relevant, it's always changing, it's never going to be absolute. You see, they want you to embrace the idea that what you hold as truth may not necessarily be truth for someone else. So don't speak up. Don't voice your concerns, they would say. Don't speak out against something such as marriage being just for a man and a woman. Don't say anything in opposition to those who would claim that a boy can become a girl or a girl can become a boy. Now, of course, they're going to make sure that their voices are heard in our schools and through celebrities and entertainment and media, but don't you speak out and let your voice be heard. Parents, we need to get our minds right. But secondly, here's something else. We need to stay strong in our godly values. In other words, don't let the world melt you into their mold. The world wants you to submit to their standards. They want you to bow the knee to the current worldly fad of the day. Resist the temptation to fall in line with those who are set on the destruction of Judeo-Christian values. Listen, everyone in your community might bow the knee to Baal, but don't you do it. You be like the prophet Daniel, who would not bow to the political powers of his day. Be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, over in the Bible, in Daniel chapter 3, verse 16, we read, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And He will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Parents, be strong, because your kids are dependent upon your leadership. Thirdly, as a parent, be vocal. Go to the PTA meetings, go to the county meetings, the city meetings, attend those public gatherings that are addressing the matters involving your children, and speak up. You know, there's a big push to try and silence anyone who does not go along with the immoral agenda of some. Don't be intimidated. You see, they want you to be silent. So do the opposite and be vocal. Be vocal for godly values. And then lastly, teach your children the difference between right and wrong. Talk with your children about the issues that they are being confronted with at school and in the media. Now, I know that these topics may sometimes make us a little uncomfortable discussing with our children. But you know, as a godly parent, we don't really have a choice. There are certain cultural trends that are sweeping across this nation, and whether we like it or not, our children are being exposed to these vices. And if they're only getting the world's distortion of right and wrong, and we're not out there to offer the bigger picture and to provide that godly instruction in matters that they are thinking about, why would we be surprised when our kids start reasoning like the world and embracing the world? And so it is important that we as parents communicate with our kids.